Okay, we're going to continue in Revelation 21. I just want to add this real quick. I keep forgetting to do this. If you're seeing this on Facebook, you can go to Barry and I have a personal website. It's www.raisedandseated.com. And in that website will be the entirety of this series and a lot of other things that are there. Go check that out. I don't know that I've ever actually said that here on Facebook, and of course this video will be added there. But do go and there's a lot of things in there. There's something for everybody. If you have any comments or suggestions for us, please give them to us. I had someone share something with me just last week about this ceiling fan behind me, that it was such a distraction. And so it's off today because, I don't pay attention to it while I'm talking. I'm just talking straight into a phone, which is really weird. I'm like talking to myself. So I didn't even notice the fan. But in years past, there was someone else in our life who couldn't handle a ceiling fan. So, of course, if there's anything that we need to know, let us know because we need all the help we can get. So with that being said, Revelation 21, and we're going to continue. Today we're actually going to hopefully we'll get through 3 of these verses because I think they kind of all go together. So that's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to go into Revelation 21:5. And he that sat upon the throne said, and of course we know that this is John the Revelator, and we know that this vision is unfolding to him. And so we know that's who's speaking here. And so John says there's someone sitting on a throne. And so I just want to stop right there and I want to bring that out, that's important. I think we have to look at every single word in a verse or we're in danger of pulling things out of context. And I've always been taught by great teachers to always look at all the words and find out what they mean and what was God really saying. And so I never want to be guilty of not doing that. So I think it's important here to just pause on a couple of those words. And the first one is sat. He sat. So, in the second word there being upon a throne. So we know that someone who sits on a throne is a place of authority. We're talking about, he's speaking of a ruler, and he is seated on that throne. That means that he has ownership of that throne. He's not just standing back here looking at the throne. And we know, of course, that as in these previous verses, we know that he is speaking of God. So here he acknowledges that God is seated. He's on his throne. He's from a very authoritative place. Then we see what happens next, and the next word is said. So God is about to speak. He is seated. He's on a throne. John acknowledges that he is ruler. He has authority, and then God begins to speak and says, "Behold." And we've already taught a whole lesson on just the word "behold." So I'm not going to go into all of that, other than it means to deeply pay attention to what comes next, because what comes after the word "behold" will be very important. And so the next thing that he says is, "I make all things new." And so if we looked at that, in its depth, if we really understand what God is saying here, God says, "Behold," pay attention. He says, "John, pay attention and make sure you write all this down so these people that will come after you will get it, that I make all things new." That means the end of decay, the end of sin, the end of everything that has been decayed, that has been destroyed, that has been touched by sin and tainted and cursed, all of that. He says, "I make all of that new." When we talk about this holy city, New Jerusalem, when we talk about getting to the end of this race that we're in, and we see God seated on a throne saying, "I make all things new." We can hold on to that promise now, because we can look around us, and I'm not even going to dare try to go into what's going on in the news now. Absolutely disgusting. But if we could just understand that there comes a time when all of that is going to be gone, and we've talked about that already in pretty good depth, I think. but that God himself is saying, I've made everything new, everything that has been touched. Even in Romans 8:22, we see nature groaning for that return to the way that, all of us who are believers and truly, if we're trying to follow Jesus Christ, and we're trying to make him Lord in our life, we are being pulled out of this world. And you ever have that where you just feel like you don't fit? I'm feeling like I don't fit. Something's off all the time. No matter where I am, it never feels like I fit there. So we're being called out of this world. We're being called out of the curse. We're being called out of the sin. We're being called out of the pain and the heartache and the nightmare. And we're being called out of what's going on in the news. So that's such a promise that we can hold on to, just that alone, even if we forget about the rest of what we've already talked about, and I hope we don't, but just holding on to that God is seating in a place of authority, that his government shall never end. And from that place, he makes this magnificent promise that he makes all things new. And I just want to say this, that not only will, nature will be made new, and the sin and the curse and all of those, but I will be made new. And I'm not just talking about, I have arthritis, and so when it gets wet in the winter time, my fingers will hurt and my knees will pop. I'd say snap, crackle, pop, sound like a cereal box. A lot of us deal with that, and some people have a lot of worse problems and health issues, and all of that will be gone, and I'm glad for that. But more than that, we've talked about how he will make our minds new. We won't have to remember these hurts and these things that have caused us to cry and to suffer. But just to know that I can be made new, that my mind and my body, even my spirit will be made new, because I will commune with God. You will commune with God. We will commune together with God in this glorious place where the curse and the effects of that curse are gone. I can't even imagine. I'll just speak for me personally. I can't even imagine my life without the effects of the curse, without the effects of the nightmare, without the effects of the rejections and the abuses, and just the mean-spirited people. I can't even imagine what that will be like. And so that brings me to the next thought. And I think out of these 3 verses, this is my favorite part, because I like to imagine the Bible people as real people like you and I. And I love this where, God he's drawing all of this all the way down to verse 5. He's given this vision. He has shown John. And I just imagine John standing there with his mouth open, looking around like, what in the world is, everything that he's hearing, and God's making these promises. And then he says, he sees him sitting on the throne. That alone would be enough to get our attention. And then he says, I make all things new. And then the next thing we see is, and he said unto me, write. And I love to just imagine that John would be, can you imagine? I mean, imagine everything that he has just seen. He would be, first of all, there was all the trauma of up to Revelation 20. So now in 21, we're seeing all this glorious promise and all of the prior things that have been wiped away, and the nightmare's gone, and now everything is wonderful and wondrous and magnificent, and we're about to find out that it's going to be very beautiful. And so all of this is here in John's vision, and I just imagine that John would have been standing there looking around at this vision and seeing and listening to what God is saying, hearing his promises, hearing those promises, looking at the promise standing in front of him, and God has to say, hey, right, don't forget this. And I love that, because the next thing he says to John is right, and then he tells him why. For these words are true and faithful. And again, y'all know I'm about to tell you something about those two words. This scene right here, just this one alone, when God tells him to write, when God tells him, he's sitting on the throne, he says, behold, everything's new. He says, write, because these words are true and faithful. I'm about to tell you what they mean. But this scene is alive. This scene is active. It's powerful. And if we don't get a picture of that scene in our mind and in our spirit, we're going to miss the entirety of what happened here. And so it's important also to know that John was a revelator, and God had told him to write the revelation. Some people prophesy with their mouth, some people prophesy with their pen. And so he's telling John, he's showing them his future vision. He's saying, write this down. He's saying, hey, don't forget to write. These words are true and they're faithful. And I want to add this. This is the last time, this verse 5 is the last time in the Bible where God literally says to write something down. And I think that's important. How astounded John must have been at this point. But then the next words that God says, true and faithful. So let's just, I'm going to tell you the definition. The word true. True is fact, it's reality. He says, write these words. Write these words because they're reality. Write these words, they're accurate, they're exact, they're correct, and they're verifiable. I love that. They're verifiable. Write this down, John. I'm giving you a promise to give to the people. And these words are verifiable. It never tarnished. It's never a lie. It's not a lie today when I say it. It's not going to be a lie in the future. I'm going to bring this to pass. These words are honest. We know that, God is truth. There is no lie in him. We know that truth is revealed in God's word. We know truth will set us free. How good to know today that the truth of these words, write this down, John, these words are truth, that these words will set you free from today, from all this chaos and just disgusting things in the news and in the world around us. This is true, John. Write this down. This is true. We know that truth opposes lies. And then the next word there is faithful. Faithful means to remain loyal, to be steadfast, constant, unchanging. Write this down, John. This is unchanging. I'm never going to change my mind about what I'm going to give my people. He says, I'm devoted to it. I'm dedicated to this, John. You can write my name on it. Give it my signature. God Almighty, you can put my stamp of approval on this because these words are dependable. They're trustworthy. The Greek word there is pistos, pistos, I suppose. It means worthy of trust. These words are worthy of my people's trust. And so we can know that anything that God tells us in his word, and of course we're speaking of Revelation 21, we're speaking of the getting to the end of this thing, this horrid race that we're in sometimes, that God says to John, I'm going to make it all new. No matter what it is, I'm going to fix it. The decay of the trees, I'm going to fix that. He says the decay of man, I'm going to fix it. The depravity of a mind, I'm going to fix that. All of these things will be new. So if you're dealing with something today that is broken and looks unchangeable, unfixable, know that God told John to write this down for you. He said, John, write this down because Tammy's going to need this. Tammy's going to need to know that when in 2026, when the world is absolutely gone bat mad, that my words are true and faithful. That I'm going to keep my promise that I made to you right here on these pages. And then let me go on. Verse 6, and he said to me, it is done. We know in the Bible that there's a time where Jesus Christ says the words, it is finished. The work that he came to earth to do was accomplished in that moment. It was finished. And he made that declaration at the cross. So here we see God saying, it is done. God's eternal purpose it's done. It's finished. It's all come down from God out of heaven. It is finished. It's glorious. It's wonderful. The curse is over. He's bound the enemy. He's fixed everything that could possibly be broken. And he says, it's done. I am Alpha and Omega. Here's God declaring who he is. I am Alpha, I am Omega, I am the beginning and the end. Remember that all the way back in the beginning in the garden, God had a plan. And he says, I had my plan in the beginning and I have my plan in the end, which is the beginning. It's the great beginning. So I am Alpha, I'm Omega, I'm the beginning and the end. And I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He says, those who are thirsty, anyone who has made it through to this point, they have come thirsty. And God gives this glorious promise. He says, if you're thirsty, I'm gonna quench that thirst forever, and I'm gonna do it freely. I'm gonna do it openly. I'm gonna be dedicated about it. I'm making a promise. And then it says, he that overcomes shall inherit all things. And that's so important. He that overcomes. So what does it mean to overcome? That means we're going to go through some things. Some of us are going through some things. We're going through some things right now, some things, and they're heavy. And we're going to go through some things that are going to be a lot worse than anything that we've gone through behind us or anything we're going through even now. Those things that are coming, those things that are on the scene right now and that are projected just a little bit out. It's not much longer. Those things will be worse and we'll have to overcome. The Bible says he who endures to the end shall be saved. So he says he that overcomes. So this is God acknowledging, hey, if you feel like, let me just say this. You know, sometimes we can feel like, I'll speak about me, okay? Sometimes I can feel like nobody cares what I'm going through. Sometimes we can feel like nobody understands. We can feel like nobody wants to listen. We can feel like people are judgmental and they're cruel and they're hateful and they spread those lies and those rumors about things that we're going through. And it's my dad always said, if you're pointing your finger, you got three pointing back at you. So when we're saying someone else is guilty of something, we've got to look and see, what am I guilty of? So this is God saying that he's acknowledging. It doesn't matter what people think out here. They may not understand what you're overcoming, what you're coming over. But God himself will acknowledge. He that overcomes will inherit all things, will inherit all of these new things, this new city, this new heaven, this new earth, this new way, this life without sin and void and pain and heartache and the nightmare and the hurt and the rejection and the jerks. He says, if you overcome, you'll inherit all of these things. It's a promise. And I love this, and I'm going to end with this one for this lesson. And I will be his God, and he shall be my son. So if we looked up at in verse 3, he said, God said, and John said, and God himself shall be with them and be their God. Here he says, I will be his God. So this is like a more possession, more of an ownership. We've moved from their God to his God, to my God. He will be my God, and I will be his, this says son, but I will be his daughter. You will be his son. We will be his children forever without the curse. So I'm going to stop right there. Don't miss the next lesson. The next lesson is very powerful, because we're going to see an abrupt change in what God has to say to John in this vision. So I'm going to stop right there.